India's demographic future. Is India poised to reap the benefits of a demographic dividend, or are we heading towards a demographic debacle? To shed light on this topic, we have with us Maheshwer Peri, founder of Careers 360. Mr. Peri, we are eager to hear your perspective.
Hi, expressway, fast expressway, lot of investment. And many a time I keep questioning, I think most administrators and governments try to invest far too much on physical infrastructure, whereas we keep talking of demographic dividend. And that bothers me a lot because when you see the track record of us as a country over the last 30, 40 years, the kind of promises that we made that we'll invest 6% of GDP in education, we'll try to increase the infrastructure, we'll ensure that right to education, it guarantees everyone education, but we tax education on the other side, right? So what I did was I tried to put up a certain set of data points. I'm going to speak lesser, but the data will speak more. Let's go through the data and then maybe you will have some questions, I'll take it. There is a lot of conversation about Nehru era and post-Nehru era, right? And obviously Nehru had a clean slate because he didn't have anything, so anything that he created was a creation of his. So he had that advantage in that sense, right? But if you look at it, the first IIT was in 1950, the first AIMS was 56, the first NIT 59, the first IIM 61, the first Kendriya Vidyalaya was 63, ISRO was 62, midday meal scheme, which actually brought children over to the schools, was 63, right? So all these were innovations that happened in the Nehru era, and now when we look at it, there are more IITs, more IIMs, more AIMS, and so on and so forth. We're replicating the same thing because obviously scale is needed, so we're trying to go for scale. But the innovation in education, in a certain sense, stopped. We actually created a few NLUs, NIDs, NIFT, ICERs, and so on and so forth, but in a certain sense, our innovation in what next for the country stopped. Triple ITs, of course, is one of them. Now, I hope that someone will work on AI and bring them in. But in a certain sense, the thinking of what next for the country to achieve its goals somewhere has got stunted is my perception, right? So, which comes to me, brings to me. So what happened, post 2000, and by the way, this is pre-Nehru era and post-Nehru era we're talking, but what exactly happened post 2000? When you look at it, we started working on taxation. In 2004, we created education cess called the primary education cess. 2% of all incomes are taxed, right? This way, right? Yeah. 2% of our incomes were taxed. In 2007, we increased that, saying now we're going to charge you for higher education also. By the way, when we started the 2004 education cess, we said the current investment, which is about 3.6% of GDP those days, is not good enough for us to achieve our goals. So we should start charging, and we'll add this money to the larger kitty so that we can make it 6%. That's the stated goal. So we started with 2% education cess, increased that to 3% in 2007, increased that to, in 2017, we increased that to 4% and added health cess also, right? In 2012, we started levying service tax on students. It can be on coaching, tuition, geometry boxes, you name it, everything had a service tax, which was not there before 2012, right? In 2017, we withdrew the exemptions on outsourced services. So you are having a hostel which is outsourced, it is taxed at 18% today, which essentially means that you need to be running a hostel. A university, instead of thinking of academics, is supposed to run a hostel, run a transportation business, run a store, run a catering service. Otherwise, the student is taxed 18%. Which is so unfair for the student because either the university spends its time in creating good academic environment and good faculty and ensure that the learning is proper, or they start running, doing transportation business where 1,000 buses are going to bring students in and so on and so forth. But it happened. So at this point in time, what we essentially have is that we have a GST regime which taxes 18% of most of what students spend, but for anything in formal education. Now look at the irony about this whole thing. The formal education, which is class 12th, up to class 12th, Students study, we create the curriculum, we create the pedagogy, we create the assessment, we create a testing environment. And we tell them it's not good enough for you to get into an undergrad program. So what do? We create an entrance examination. And once the entrance examination comes, the coaching comes. And the coaching is taxed at 18%. Last year, in 2024, the income from coaching, GST income from coaching was 5,517 crores. 5517 crores. And by 2029, it will be 12,500 crores. Just on coaching. We're not talking of tuition, we're not talking of skilling certification. The other thing that we've done is, we said, okay, you need to, again, everything was created by us the wise people, of how the student must learn, what they must learn, how they must be tested, how they must be assessed. At the end of it, we said, oh, 50% of you are not employable. They passed the examination that we created for them. They did exactly what we told them. But we tell them, no, you're not employable. So what do you bring on top of it? A magic potion, which you could not achieve in 22 years of studies. You bring in a skilling certification program of 3 months. So you tell the student that, okay, 22 years you learned what I told you, but it's not good enough. Learn this 3 month skilling and certification course and you'll be employable. And on top of that, we put 18% on top of that because it's in informal education now. At every single stage, we created those benchmarks, we created those tools, we created the testing environment, and we failed them. And then we come back to the whole thing saying, oh, you're not employable, you're not studied well, and so on and so forth. He passed the examination that we created for them. Right? So what we do now is we collected, the GST, as I said, is 5,517 crores for coaching. The last year, 24-25 budget estimate for education cess alone, which is 3%, not 4% by the way, because 1% are removed for the health cess, is 62,500 crores. 62,500 crores is what we pay as education cess, which is meant to be increasing the budget of investment in education. But in a certain sense, because they merged it with a larger budget, it's subsumed. So what was the government was investing earlier is being subsidized by the education cess. The 3.5% kept going down and down and down. And what does it mean? So we actually, on one hand, we said we have a right to education where education is supposed to be free and so on and so forth. Just tell me whenever I'm right, sir. But on the other hand, we started taxing students, but the investment kept going down while the taxes kept going up. And I'll prove, again, show that with some numbers. These are the number of schools in India. In 2008-9, before the education cess came in, you actually had about 12.85 lakh schools, of which 10.35 were government schools and 2.49 were private schools. The private schools grew by 35% and the government schools grew by 9%. In fact, last year, the latest data that says 3 states where the population grew about 11% in the last 10 years, the number of schools went down by 1.5%. Because they found it unviable. I don't know how a country like India can actually say a school is unviable. It just defies logic for me because we keep talking of demographic dividend. And most of these people believe that the bigger the population, the bigger the demographic dividend. There is no dividend that accrues unless you invest in it. We fail that basic principle that an investment leads to a dividend and not that most populous nation leads to a dividend or the youngest populous nation leads to a dividend. Right? So the growth in private schools is 4x of what it is in public schools in percentage terms. By the way, this is a smaller problem because here the states also come in. And the states, some of the states are really investing very well in education. Right? You go to the colleges in India, the government colleges, you would have known, like in my generation, we always say, oh, there's a degree college that came in my district. Now you think of it, how many degree colleges are being established. Of course, you're talking of the big news, which is an IIT came to my city and an AIMS came to my city or an IIM came to my city. And by the way, these are also renaming of the existing institutions. Like Hyderabad, you actually had Nizam Institute of Medical Sciences for a long time. Now it's AIMS Hyderabad. And that's how it goes. So you actually reclassify something. The government colleges went up by 10%. The private colleges went up from 24,000 to 35,696. We outsource higher education to the private players. Very clear. Because of the total increase in colleges, about 12,000, right? 92.5% came from private entrepreneurs and only 7.5% was contribution from the government. The total colleges, if you see over the last 12 years, increased from 32,974 to 45,473, about 12,500. Of this 12,500, about 11,000 has come from private education players and only. And there is nothing wrong about that. By the way, this is not a statement against why private is coming in. This is a question mark on why the government is not investing. We need more supply. We need more competition. And that is failing. Same thing with universities. In 2010-11, we actually had 384 government universities, which went to 576, 50% more. And again, here also, some of the states have created niche universities or reclassified some of the colleges as universities. And by the way, I'm not referring to Institute of Eminence here, which is all the IIMs and all, which already existed, and they made them into universities at this point. So I removed them from here. The private colleges went up from universities went up from 178 to 586, a 230% jump. So in 2010-11, we had, if you just look at the numbers closely, we had 2 government universities for 1 private university. Within 10 years, what we achieved is that we have more private universities than public universities. And it continues the problem. Like, the education inflation is led by the fee at schools and colleges, right? The latest NSS says that between 2014 and 18, the fee increased by 30%. 30%. And a survey of 27,000 parents talked of only in COVID times 30 to 50% growth in fees. Increasingly, by the way, most of the spending, by the way, in higher education institutions these days is happening in not for faculty and teaching, but for maintenance and services. There is one government order in Telangana which essentially says that at least 50% of your total fee should be spent on faculty. One of the schools didn't do it. When an inspection happened, they actually had to reduce the fee from 1.22 lakh to 57,000. Because the money that was being spent on it, faculty was only 28,500 out of the 1.22 lakh. So when and the reason it's a rat race, we parents want more comfortable places for our students. We want an AC environment. We want better playgrounds, and on and on and on. So we kept increasing the needs of the student, driven by most of us in this room possibly, ignoring the people, the 80% who are much below us, who can't afford that and just want decent, good education. But we kept adding facilities and we kept charging for that, and there is always a demand for that. But it works against the country, though it might work for the facilities for our children. Right? I'll now show you a few other data points that will help you understand this, right? In 2013-14, IIT Bombay, the total fee was for 8 semesters was 3.64 lakh. Now it's 8 lakh, which means about 130% jump in 10 years. Right? So what essentially happened now I'm taking the 15-year thing, right? What was 1,12,000 rupees in 2008 is now 8,08,000. 7x increase in a country where we say that we want to achieve the demographic dividend, we want to invest in the people to make them, do well for the country and make the country prosperous. But the fee increased 7 times. And of course, there's a great logic that's given by, how do I put it, capitalist, if I may say so, which essentially says that anyway they're going to be placed very, very well, so why do you want to, even subsidize their education? That's not the way it works. In which case, everything should be, if it's market-driven, then make it market-driven. This can be at 50 lakh also, an IIT seat will go. At 50 lakhs also, an IIT seat will be taken. So why do you want to even create that? Just drive it market forces. But they keep doing that. Now this is NIT. What was 1,40,000 is now 5 lakh. All in 11 years. And it keeps going. By the way, I also was trying to understand whether it's indexation, whether it's inflation that actually rose this price. The inflation during the same time is 1.89 times. The growth in fees is 3.5 times. So it is not led by inflation. The inflation in these 15 years has gone above 200%. What was X has become 2X. But the fee what was X has gone up to 7X, 6X, 5X, and 4X. So it is not led by inflation, and for a country which is wanting to achieve its demographic dividend, I say it's criminal. If we don't believe in that, it's okay. We can always keep creating fantastic buildings. There is no issue about that. Right. Now, I think I'll just jump the law part of it for a moment because I have lesser time. Right. Now, in law, what essentially happened is, you actually have to look at this Symbiosis Law School in Pune, which had a fee of 5.75 lakh in 2011, which is now 22.65 lakh in 12 years' time. In law, what happened is, I talked of lack of investment. Before 2012, we actually had about 17 GNLU, National Law Universities. Some renamed as National Law Universities, some were created. But after 2012, there is no new law university that came in, National Law University. So what happened? Of course, the demographics were pushing up. There were more people wanting to do law. But the good universities stopped. The supply came from the private side. And they didn't have a checks and balances. So the price started shooting up. And what was 5.75 lakh is now 22 lakh. And this is at private place. In some, even the government itself realized that I have greater demand, so let me charge more. Like in this case, look at NID Ahmedabad. The fee in 2015 was 4.8 lakh. And this NID, it's a government institution, public institution. It's now 15.72 lakh. 3x time in just about 10 years. That's because either we cut down the investment or cut down the support for an institution, because the budgetary grants were not there. And somewhere the government started saying that, oh, you must live on your own, you must thrive on your own, you must survive on your own. So you actually have NID now charging at 15.72 lakh. The problem in these kind of cases is you will not have diversity. I remember, about a couple of years back, I went to a B school and started talking to the students. It's a B school with a very, very high fee. And the problem statement that they had is, oh, we need better Wi-Fi connectivity and we need better flyovers. That is the problem statement. That's the biggest problem that they want to solve. They want to ensure that your ex reach your home in 5 minutes time when you're late to the office. That's the biggest problem that they want to solve. And that's not how a country like India should be looking at itself. Right. Now you look at this whole thing. As I said, 4.8 lakh has jumped to 15.72 lakhs. In the same time, if you look at the inflation index, it's 59%, whereas the fee grew by about 3.5 times. MBBS. Now this is the biggest racket around that you see. NEET and all, everyone says, why do people pay 50 lakh rupees for an, paper, jo leak hota hai, right? You look at the fee on the right side. The central universities charge you about 1.22 lakh. The government college charge you 1.73 lakh. And look at the other thing. 63 lakhs is the fee at the private college and 1.02 crores. And by the way, this is minus the hostel. Right, 2 minutes. Right. So this creates a problem for me. MTech fee in 2019, the government of India at IIT said all MTech's fee would increase by 900%. Not 100%, not 900%, 9x. Why? Because why only 20,000? It should be 2 lakh. They forgot that we need to be a research country. We need to be creating research. We need to be having teaching assistants. We forgot all those ambitions. We said, oh, MTech is being far too subsidized. We should increase it. 9x. They made it in a staggered way. But at this point in time, the research is going down for the country. Right. IIM Ahmedabad. What was 3.16 lakh in 2005 is now 25 lakh. Now, I just looked at the IIM balance sheet just to understand whether they actually need the money, right? The balance sheet of IIM Ahmedabad, it was last year in 2023 grew from 1,900 crores to 2020, which means they actually had a cash surplus of 116 crores. The fee charge was 114. They could have not charged the fee and still, broken even. Right? The excess of income over expenditure is 38.12, but if you add back the amortization, which is the buildings that are amortized, it's 87 crores. The long-term investments in the books was 1,365 crores. The cash and bank balances was 100 crores. Of the total academic receipts of 302 crores, the tuition fee was only 114 crores. And they had a surplus of 114 crores. They don't need the money. They raise it in the sleep because 7% inflation. They don't need the money. And the fee is 25 lakh today. Education loans, because the cost of education increased, you go through education loans. In 2005, you had 4.68 lakh students taking loan. In 2023, you have 32 lakh students taking loans. And the ticket price also went up from what was X to 2.5x. So what was 6,700 crores of education loans in 2005 is now 100,000 crores. Right? School and college dropouts, they went up. We actually have something called NEET, N-E-E-T, which is not in education, employment or training. And that is 43.8% amongst females and 16.1% in males. And the most interesting thing is 22.58% people say they've dropped out of education because of financial constraints. We want GER, we want higher education, we want 100% literacy rate, but 23% people are dropping out because of financial constraints, and 21% are dropping out because they have to contribute to the family income, so they go back to economies. So that is what the problem is. I think I'll just stop here. I just have nothing more. So I'm just thinking, we talk of demographic dividend. We as parents spend about 15-20% of our income on children's salaries. But the moment we become a minister, we spend 3% of the money on our children's salaries because they're not our children. Thank you so much.